Hi, I'm Colin Seal, the founder and CEO of thinkLaw, where we help educators teach critical thinking to all students. And I'd like to welcome you to this week's episode of Hashtag Thinking Tuesday. We have a powerful topic for you this week, and it's called Failing Fabulously. 3 ways reframing mistakes builds critical thinking. This came out of our company retreat, which we had today, where we were going through our core values of communication and imagination and making a difference. And my chief operating officer, Dana, when asked the question, what are we missing? Is there anything about the way we go about doing our work that seems to be missing here? Her response was failing fabulously. And when she said it, I immediately could not agree more. There's so much of how we approach our work that uses design thinking, that's all about failing fast and failing often and pivoting the work that we do, that made me thought, man, if we can really talk about failing fast as part of the culture within education, if we can think about what it means to have these fabulous fails that create all these moments of opportunity and learning and growth, then we're going to really be on our way to transforming the critical thinking culture. And remember, when we talk about critical thinking and building critical thinking skills, we're not just focused on skills. We're not just looking at analysis and reasoning and metacognition and the ability to do all those things. We're talking about getting the habits and the mindsets so that we don't end up in a situation where people that seem to know better don't actually do better. How do we make this part of a practice that's almost instinctual for our students? So with that said, here are the 3 top reasons that reframing mistakes can help us build critical thinking. First, this helps us build a culture where you value reflection over perfection. And I always think about this story when it's a popular sales story about the guy who he can sit here with 10 leads and he can go through and call all 10 and close all 10 of those sales. And it's pretty awesome. But then you've got this other guy who isn't as good at all. He just doesn't have that charisma, doesn't know how to close these deals as well. So he's only closing 3 out of 10 of these sales. The thing is, the guy that closes 3 out of 10 knows this. He knows that he's flawed. He understands that his approach doesn't get him that level of 100% success. So what does he do? He goes on 60 calls. And out of those 60 calls, he ends up getting 3 every single time. So he ends up with 18 sales compared to the guy that's perfect and gets 10 out of 10. But when you're 10 out of 10, you might not get into that reflection mode of what do you need to do better? What do you need to do more of? So when you understand what some of the constraints are, what some of the barriers are, what some of those struggles are that are leading to these mistakes or these things that are steering you off course, you end up being a lot more driven towards your reflection versus getting results that are absolutely where they need to be. So the second part, and it's somewhat related to the first, is that mistakes create opportunities for innovation. So when you make a mistake, a lot of times you get to the point where you start to realize, how common is this mistake? Why is this mistake actually happening? What types of things can we do to reduce the likelihood that a mistake like this can occur? And when you look at this, right, when you think about what it means from a time management perspective, there's no surprise that we have so many companies that have come out to build these practical systems to help people organize their time. When you think about what happens when people are losing messages over email and it's doing so much back and forth and spending so much time wasted on email, there's no surprise that systems like Slack and Microsoft Teams have started to pop up to kind of change the way we go about communicating with our team. So every time you make a mistake, it's an opportunity to innovate. Last but not least, what mistakes actually do is it helps us to build a little bit more insight, a little bit more instinct when it comes to metacognition. When we make mistakes, you're almost forced to be in a place where you end up being a much better predictor of what can go wrong because you've actually had that lived experience of making that mistake yourself. I have a colleague, Sarah, who's our curriculum and training coach, and she always says this thing of, if she has a student that gets a 100% on a test or a quiz, sorry, you didn't get a chance to grow your brain. Because when you do make mistakes, you cannot help but to step back and think about what you could have done better, which is such a big part of why, as a teacher, I've always made sure that we gave opportunities for test corrections and working towards mastery, which included meaningful reflections towards those mistakes. Because once you get into that habit of understanding not only what mistake you made, but why you made that mistake, you are now being able to delve into your thinking. And if you're able to do that at the end of a process like that, it makes it so much more powerful the next time you're faced with a similar sort of problem. And you can have that reflection at the very beginning to avoid going wrong. So thank you for joining us for this week's hashtag Thinking Tuesday to talk about failing fabulously. And may this week be a fabulous week of nothing but fails for you. Take care.